Welcome to a new episode of our podcast series AI Proof. Here we talk about the future.
Samuele, it's great to have you here with us at the Hackmürzeschlag. You've been doing workshops with our students all week long. It's always a very great experience that you bring to them here. What do you actually do in your professional life? You are a consultant and also an expert in the field of AI.
Yes, thank you, Erich, for the invitation. I'm happy to be here, also in the school. Exactly what we do professionally is, of course, among other things, training and more education on AI in schools, not only in companies. What we did this week was AI in school from the perspective of the students in this case, yes. How can we really use AI as a bicycle and not a wheelchair? And it was a wonderful week. We really had a lot of fun. And we will actually talk more about that during the course of the podcast.
You work a lot with young people, also here in our school. In what context do you encounter AI most often when learning with young people at the moment?
The topic of AI is also sometimes by young people. I mentioned these two words before that are very important to me. And we also have time to explore that a bit further, but specifically the concept of a bicycle and a wheelchair, yes. What we did this week, and it's becoming clearer and clearer to me working together with young people on this topic, is precisely to perceive these tools as a bicycle, really as tools that we can use to improve ourselves, to grow, to learn more, and not instead of giving up our thinking skills. So to speak, yes, this is a topic that I see again and again, not only with young people, but also with adults, yes. It's really a matter of completely stopping to think and ask questions and to question oneself. And sometimes people go around, and the problem is that as soon as we really have a challenge, we immediately reach into our pocket and ask ChatGPT right away, yes. And the product can really be perceived as a wheelchair instead of a bicycle. And that is, in my opinion, where we as a society right now, I'd say, not just as a school, but of course as a city, as a country, as a society should move towards.
Beautiful. If you look at the last, let's say, 6 to 12 months in retrospect, what has changed most in your view in the use of AI, especially in relation to young people?
I believe that a year ago or recently, ChatGPT was still actually perceived as a tool. Yes, as a tool. I think that now it has become much, much more part of our lives now. And we no longer perceive it as a tool, but we really see it as an environment. It is part of our environment, no matter where we are, in the kitchen, in the classroom, on the go, with friends or family. It is part of our experience now. That is why it is no longer just a tool, but rather part of our environment. I would even say an environment, really. I have seen this, again, not just with young people, but with myself too in our circle, how strongly, and I really believe that the strength of this tool is how easily it has integrated itself into our lives. Yes, I have noticed that, indeed.
Is there actually an area where you are surprised that AI is not yet being used at all or very little, even though it might be possible?
I think to really question oneself, to pause and to reflect and to truly question oneself and to simply genuinely have the curiosity to notice and recognize one's own mistakes. And I think it is very easy, and we have also learned this through social media, how easy it is to get into so-called echo chambers, yes, into these bubbles where if I watch football or if I have a certain political opinion, then I will see more of what I have already seen, yes. You can see that in the field of AI too, of course. And if I ask a question on a topic like, is it right that this and that? Of course, the AI will support you. And we are always being validated, more and more validated. And that makes us happy to be validated, obviously. I think it would also be cool, really, not just for young people, but in general, more of the theme of we want to use this tool as mentors, and mentors are very often a bit annoying. Yes, they are a bit annoying. They interrupt us. They show us where things are actually going wrong. They show us so-called blind spots in our minds or lives that we do not see clearly or that we avoid a bit. In my opinion, that is an area where we could use it or apply it a bit more. And it is not such an abstract topic. We should just adjust the prompts a bit, change them so that instead of, is it right that this and that? No. Instead, it is find the flaws in my thinking or find the mistakes. Where can I improve? Where am I wrong? Find at least three mistakes in this text, for example. Yes, I see a lot of potential there still.
You have already given me a wonderful keyword there. In your view, what are the most common prompts that young people actually use and apply?
Summarize it. I very often see, summarize this for me, solve the problem. I find that they really are, and I'm not saying they're wrong, quite the opposite. I'm just saying the problem is behind the how often we use something like in our everyday routines, not whether we use something or not. Yeah. And I think, again, if we really assume that the output is what the school measures in terms of a grade, yeah, or the length of a text, then of course, as students will also indirectly say we're focused on the output. We want a certain output. And I think instead we could really focus on what is the process behind the output. And then based on that, we can also design our prompts a bit differently. Instead of summarize this, it's help me with this to write a good summary. Ask me questions so that I can write a summary, yeah? Because it's irrelevant whether the summary is good or not good. It's more important to me, how did I get there, yeah? And how can I use these tools again to get there independently as well? I see potential there again.
So an interesting reversal, actually. So we should actually ask the AI to ask us questions.
Not the other way around.
And not the other way around. A completely new approach. Very interesting. Samuele, adults and young people live in different worlds. That's just how it is. It's always been that way. It was like that in my youth too. Where do you see the biggest misunderstandings in these two worlds, for example, that adults have about young people in dealing with AI?
Sometimes as adults, we assume that the younger generation, because they're digitally savvy or digital natives, they know their way around. And I think it's a big mistake. And I'm not saying this as an adult. I'm not saying it as a teenager. I'm just saying it as a person who's a bit in between, right in the middle of these two worlds. And I don't think that usage means understanding. I don't believe that the more we use a tool, the more understanding we have. Usage is an essential point for understanding. But I think sometimes we should pay more attention from the adult side, or also, of course, from the teacher, that when young people use more social media, same topic, or AI tools, it doesn't necessarily mean that they know more about it. It just means that they might be much more dynamic. Maybe they know more tools, definitely. But we should really, the topic of prompts, ethics, fake news, source research, these are topics that can be a bit boring on paper, yeah. Young people want to play right away. We looked at that yesterday and the day before with the topic of vibe coding, how they want to prompt something immediately. And for me, there's still a huge gap between adults who think, my son or my daughter is 15, 16, 17 anyway. They know their way around anyway. Actually, they know their way around much better than I do. And to a certain extent, that is true. But again, we should also bring more education into this topic, spend more time talking about how we use such tools. Yes, I see a lot of potential there as well.
Yes. Thank you, Samuele. As mentioned, you spend a lot of time with young people in your workshops. You have a lot to do with young people there.
Yes.
You are a young person yourself, but not quite that young anymore.
Yes, older.
Than the young people you work with. What are the kinds of things that we adults, and maybe you too, can already learn from young people in connection with AI?
I always find it very enriching to work with young people, especially on the topic of jumping in, experimenting, maybe even making mistakes sometimes. Yes. It depends. There are also areas where they are very much influenced by our society, which is very afraid of making mistakes. But they still have more of this childlike, and I really mean that in a positive way, component of just jumping into the water. Let's try this out. Yes, I make a mistake, nothing happens. We do it again, experiment. I believe this mentality is essential, especially now in this age We can really learn more of that as adults or as older people, just making more mistakes, not taking it personally. It has nothing to do with my identity, whether I make mistakes or not. On the contrary, my identity might also have to do with how I react to the mistake. Nothing happened, fine. I wrote down a few lessons learned. How can I do it even better next time? And we can certainly still learn a bit of that from the young people. And learning again also means teaching again, yes. And it is a mutual relationship. So the teacher is also the learner, and the learner is also the teacher again, yes. Experimenting, and certainly also the range of tools they know. It's crazy how many platforms, and every time I work with young people, at least one or two new platforms really come up that I didn't know before, yes. So of course they also spend a lot of time online, and that's why they find platforms I don't know. Yes, exactly. So I would summarize it as experimenting and this openness or curiosity.
Good, Samuele. We were just talking about how we as adults, especially we teachers, can also learn from our students and young people. What has actually been the story lately that surprised you the most in connection with the topic of young people and AI use?
Recently, I had a training session at a company for apprentices, and it was a funny moment, a very enriching moment where an apprentice, the question that I wrote to ChatGPT, or rather the instruction grill me on a topic. And that was cool because then, of course, ChatGPT took it really seriously. And it was just such a task. It's not relevant now what it was about, but for me, it was exactly this approach that we discussed before. Take these tools as a mentor, almost as an opponent sometimes, yeah. We want to see our mistakes. We don't want to be validated. I know it's a bias. We just want to be validated. It's fun, but it also confirms our opinion. But using these tools to grill us, to just let us make mistakes, to really, and in those moments, we can really learn anew, in my opinion, yeah. That was a moment, an enriching moment for sure.
Grilling.
Grilling.
Okay, very interesting input. What all you can actually learn with AI.
Yeah.
There are, of course, always limits and ethical concerns in connection with AI.
Yeah, sure.
What are, from your point of view, really the biggest risks? We are a school after all, and as a school, we must also exercise a great responsibility towards our students. What would be, from your point of view, the biggest risks we should watch out for?
We have to accept that homework or exam preparation and even exams themselves will run differently. Now, we have a tool in our pocket that can handle all the answers more or less extremely well, maybe sometimes much better than the teacher, yeah. And that's why I sometimes ask myself the question, okay, in such an environment, what does it even mean to learn? And what does it even mean to give an exam, yeah? And I think that the moment has really arrived where and for me, it's really an ethical question. How can we give homework, or how can we also give material that the students should really learn? How can we really then take into account or really look at whether they are actually learning? That's really an ethical question, because I think as a school we as a society in general, but as a school also, the responsibility that young people come to learn. But if what is learned is already tangible, then what is there to do at all? And I think we should, as I said before, no longer put the output so much in the foreground, but really the processes behind it. How do I get there? And it's almost, I would even say quite critically, it's almost irrelevant what the output is. Sometimes it's also okay to make mistakes, but how did you get there? For me, that's interesting, yeah. That's one point. And of course, some basic knowledge on the topic, as I said before, like fake news, or really look at where a piece of information really comes from, what exactly is the source. That is very important. Also, to teach that with prompting, how do we actually make sure that the answer is truly the right one, right? How can we maybe use different tools? Can we really have prompts there, that actually help us to question the answer, right? And sometimes it's also enough to prompt again for an answer. Find at least 3 errors in your answer. And then funnily enough, even though it's my own answer as ChatGPT, I will still find errors. That's why it's really like troubleshooting, double check on almost everything. Yeah, not just taking it exactly one to one. Sources, fake news. I also said before exactly this, the difference between a bicycle and a wheelchair. So really as a tool that can support us in going faster and not to replace walking at all. Yeah, I would say
that is also a big challenge for us because, of course, we are shaped now at our age by knowledge that we still had to learn and partly still have internalized.
yes.
What young people will then have less and less of it is to be feared. That means we are already called upon in school to continue to convey certain basic knowledge anyway.
True.
But what would be for you like these basic skills that young people today should master?
For me, that's another I can also rephrase the question as what really makes us human in the end? Yes, what is really what are the components that make us human? I believe the ability, and we see that more and more with this big word of prompting, is do we know how to ask a question? Because sometimes the solution is exactly in the question itself. And if I ask a better question, then I am as close as possible to the answer already. And the poet Rilke, yes, also talks about fall in love with the question. Stay in the question as long as you are ready to welcome the answer. And that is for me, again, a great skill. It would be cool just to have in school asking questions. Yes, how do we ask questions? Asking questions means, or the question also means, do we empathize with the person opposite or also with ourselves? Obviously, sometimes, right? But can we really listen? Listening without intention, listening without expecting a certain answer, just being completely there. Yes. We know we've been talking about it for a long time. Attention, concentration. These are basic skills, abilities. Asking questions, empathy, and of course, thinking critically and really questioning everything. Not just what ChatGPT says, but also what my parents say, but with respect, obviously. But still a discussion, talking critically, questioning critically, to present my own opinion logically and solidly. That's already a cool thing. And then, of course, we absolutely require a mathematical foundation anyway and the different subjects that we already have and should keep. But sometimes for me, it's like the topics are really vertical versus horizontal. There are certain verticals like math and German and English, but the horizontality, if I may say so, is how can I think critically, perceive these silos everywhere? How can I practice asking questions in math, in German, in English, in science too? Yes, that an AI is certainly horizontal. Yes, it will naturally be present in every subject. That's also important to me. Yes.
So we should basically develop a new subject in school called asking questions.
I'd love to have that. Yes, as a student.
That would be a complete rethink for us. We're used to answering questions and not asking them, but that would be a whole new approach that would be really exciting for the entire school. And in school, a question now maybe also about the teachers. In your view, how can teachers best integrate AI tools into their lessons? What are your opinions on that?
I think that in many cases, we're often quite used to perceiving certain technologies as potential enemies, and anything that might threaten my status quo is therefore seen as an enemy. And I truly believe that the teacher or even the school system as a whole can actually benefit the most from these kinds of tools. Because then we really have to ask the fundamental question, what is school really? What exactly is school anyway? Yes. And I imagine a school and a class where every single student has maybe a device there, an iPad or a laptop or even a phone. And yet they learn together. There are some who are better at math, some better at German, and they teach that to the others and they explain it and they ask questions. And the teacher is a facilitator, simply trying to host the space, yes. Hosting the space, giving the time, throwing questions back in. And I think that's also really the important role of the teacher, or perhaps how teachers can actually use AI tools, is that instead of spending many hours carefully preparing certain presentations or checking and grading exams and marks, they can now focus more on their students. That's also relatively easy to automate. Yes, of course, checking everything again, questioning everything, absolutely. But investing more time as a teacher in what actually made you a teacher. And I think that's the love of knowledge, passing things on, sharing information, hosting discussions too. And I believe that with AI, teachers can really become more like teachers and less like bureaucrats, perhaps, or less like administrators, maybe. Yeah. And yeah, that's why AI tools for teachers definitely can also make life easier and lead us more towards actual learning and a new school system too. Yeah.
So, Samuele, we are here in a business school at the Commercial Academy in Mürzuschlag, and we clearly train our students for the world out there, for the economy. And from my perspective, everything is changing now because of AI. In your view, what are the most important things we should still be teaching our students here in our school?
We also had this week, this workshop on the topic of vibe coding. Yeah. And for those who haven't seen what vibe coding actually is, basically German, English, Italian, whatever your language is now a programming language. And there are tools that now allow us to program using our own native language. That means instead of the hours and thousands of euros we needed before, or until recently, to build a tool to briefly visualize an idea with software developers, with designers, we now have the possibility within really 2 hours, as we did yesterday, within 2 hours from idea to prototype. That's a game changer for me. That means how fast could everything be? How tangible can our ideas really become? And not just thinking in presentations and sticking to presentations, but let's do it. Let's really try it out. Let's see it. Let's really build a prototype like that and immediately within a few hours talk to a potential customer and show them the prototype and let them click around. It also completely changes the dynamic because ideas can become much cheaper. Before, if we wanted to make a website, we had to call someone or know our way around long, many hours, many days, many months, even sometimes until we even got to a prototype. And by then, maybe the idea has changed, maybe the environment has changed too. Now, within a few days, within a few hours, you really have a product. I think that's the speed. And again, what I just said before, this experimental approach, let's do everything. You have an idea immediately. I'll give you 2 hours. Try it out. Yeah. That's a cool playground. That school can also be a place where students can learn to make mistakes. To perceive that, simply making mistakes is no problem at all. I'm happy when I make mistakes. I even think school should even encourage making mistakes. The more mistakes you make, the better your grade will be. Such a paradigm shift, what it could mean that as a student, I would think, yeah, then I'll make as many mistakes as possible. Like now, yeah. And not, oh my God, I'm afraid if I make a mistake, then I'll get a minus or whatever. That changes a lot. Therefore, speed, experimenting as fast as possible, not being afraid of feedback, of comments also from potential customers as soon as possible. Test, take everything, go back to school, adjust the product again and back out. And these iterations, I think that's the most important thing right now.
Okay, very interesting, Samuel. Those are really very interesting insights into your world in connection with AI and young people. May I now ask you for a short word wrap where I ask you a question with two possible answers and you spontaneously choose one of these answers?
Gladly.
AI in education, an opportunity or a stress factor today?
Both, depending on how we see it. Great opportunity. I think we mainly talked about opportunities. Stress factor, if we assume. Is it that it's an enemy, or is it that we feel we have to protect our gardens even more? As humans, throughout our history, we often do this. Whenever we see an enemy, we tend to build a bigger, stronger wall, putting up more defenses. And there I would say just welcome it just as soon as possible, learn very quickly. We really have to do that. And then of course I wouldn't say now I'm a proponent for AI, everything's good AI. No, there are also many, many darker sides that we don't know yet, which if we look at the whole thing, how is society, if we assume that it's more AI, how is the job reality? Yeah, how does that look? Very big question, very difficult question to answer as well. The fact is, it's still there. We can't fight against it. We can perhaps really take it and see how we take it as a bicycle and not as a wheelchair. Therefore, opportunity if we have this approach, stress if we also have this approach.
You can see AI immediately motivates you to give a much longer answer again. The next question, AI for young people, more of a coach or a cheat sheet?
I've seen both again. Again, it depends on the approach. I see cheat sheets every day, even in the last few days. Yes, coach, hopefully. That would be very cool that as a coach, as you said, it depends on the approach we have behind it, yes. And also to cultivate this culture of mistakes and really promote it, to tell the students, hey, don't use these tools as an opponent. It must, and ChatGPT in this case, must tell you where you made mistakes and find the mistakes in ChatGPT, see who wins. That's also a cool challenge, yes. Yes.
The next question, improve the prompt or rewrite the result?
Improve the prompt. Improving the prompt is, for me, again, the question. Fall in love with the question. Understand the question better. Work on the question until the answer is as clear as possible. Yes.
And the last question, think first or ask the AI first?
I'm not answering. Think first. Think first. Always a few seconds, a few minutes, several days, whatever is needed, and then write it in. Always. Immediately build your own opinion and then see what comes back. Yes.
Samuel, thank you very much for the really interesting podcast.
Thanks.
Thank you, and I wish you much success in your future professional life.
Thanks.
Bye.
Wish you too. Thank you.